Hey, I'm Candace, your host, and if you're ready to grow your business and build your authority by getting booked on podcasts, I've got something special for you. I'm launching a brand new course that will walk you through exactly how to get booked on podcasts. Everything from identifying the right shows to pitching, preparing for interviews, and leveraging your guest appearances for growth. Plus, if you sign up for the waitlist now, you'll get early access to the course and these special bonuses. When you officially enroll in the course, you'll save $50 and get a free one-on-one strategy call with me to help you prep your speaking points and align your offers. These bonuses are limited and end on April 13th, so make sure to sign up today. Head to the link in the show notes to join and get started on your podcast guesting journey. I can't wait to help you get booked and start sharing your message with the world. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back. I have Steph Gillies back on. She was on back in February and we talked all about her entrepreneurial journey and how to pivot and lots of really great things. You can check that out. That's season 3, episode 26. Today, we're focusing more on helping that multi-passionate professional build a career or business around being multi-passionate. Steph is a career story coach focused on helping multi-passionate professionals embrace their authenticity and design a career they love. Having had 32 jobs in 15 years, Steph mastered the job search process and gained valuable insights into how to align passions with career paths. After being laid off from what she thought was her dream job in 2020, she started resume writing and career coaching. Since then, she has helped over 1,000 people discover their purpose and create a career story that truly reflects who they are. You're going to love this episode. Let's dive in. Welcome back, Steph. I'm glad to have you back. I know some things have changed since we had an episode out on my podcast back in February, and I'm super excited to hear where you are now, what's going on. Give us a quick rundown, refresher.
Thanks so much for having me. So I've been a career coach and a resume writer for 3.5 years. Recently, I refocused my business to help people who are multi-passionate, really help them design a career they love, whether that's starting a business, creating a portfolio career, or, pursuing a job and then pursuing their passions on the side. There's lots of options out there for that. That's kind of what I've been talking about, helping those generalists really thrive because we live in a very specialist world. And when you're a generalist, you can kind of feel out of place. And I'm really passionate about helping people find their place in the world.
Do you think this attributes to why, and I'm kind of generalizing, but I have talked to a lot of people in their probably 30s to 40s age range, and myself included, are kind of in this space of like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And do you feel like maybe having things that we're multi-passionate about plays into that kind of feeling that some of us as we're getting older are like, you know what? Because I was a teacher and it just seemed like, wait, this is it. I want to do other things, that type of feeling. Do you feel like that is playing into some of those?
Yeah, I have a theory that is untested and is not documented, right? Like it's just my own theory. But I think those of us who are, in that millennial age range, we were raised by boomers and the boomers were trained to go to school, get a job and work there until you get your pension. That was what they were trained to do. So they taught us, you need to find that one thing and you need to work there until you are ready to retire. I think a lot of us were taught that. For some people, that's great. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to become a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever they decided to do. But for those of us who don't resonate with specializing and feel like even thinking about doing one thing for like 10 years makes me feel anxiety. I have like anxiety around that. Being told that and being raised that way caused us to be put in a box when really we needed to be released into everything that we are and bring, whatever those special and unique gifts at that time are to the world, right? Because with multi-passionates, that can change, 5 years you might do one thing, get really good at it, and, change the face of that industry and then be like, I'm bored. Let's move on.
Oh my gosh. No, I resonate with that so much. I think that is so true. And I think of like my youngest brother, who I think he hits the millennial age, but he's like on that cusp that he really doesn't relate to us millennials, where he has not switched careers, but he's switched companies or jobs so many times whenever it suits him or whenever there's a better one. And I thought I was going to be a teacher and then retire. And that's it. That was my mind and my path until it wasn't, right? So it seems really easy when I watch him to jump from one thing to the next. And it just felt like I was making this massive life decision, this humongous decision. And it took me multiple years actually to finally make the decision to leave the classroom. So I see those differences and I think, gosh, that my life would support that theory. So how did you come about and realize this need or start talking about this multi-passionate need and creating a career that fits that? that?
It's a really interesting story, actually. It really reflects on the benefits of networking and how much I love LinkedIn. But I made this post, and I don't even remember what the post was, but it was about like sort of people who are generalists or have multiple career options. And someone commented, someone that I now speak to regularly on LinkedIn commented this TED Talk by Emily Wapnick, Why Some of Us Don't Have One True Calling. And I listened to that, and forever I was always looking for this one thing. I thought there was something wrong with me because I couldn't figure out what it was. And that TED Talk was like, this is me. This is like exactly what I've been looking for. And, in the TED Talk, they say that, you can't be a violinist and something else. And then they're like, meet this guy. And then they say his name, and he's exactly that person. And so I'm totally butchering it, but you need to listen to the TED Talk because it talks a lot about those multi-passionates and what that looks like and how you can be multiple things at once. And then Emily Wapnick has a book called How to Be Everything, and I promptly bought it and read the whole thing.
Oh my gosh, that's going to now be on my list. Maybe it's social media or whatever, where it's like, you need to niche down. You need to be if one thing and be specific. There's just a lot of noise in trying to put people in a box, and that's just not how life for the most part works. What are some signs maybe that they could identify or self-identify that this is them? Is it you're not fulfilled by your day job? What are some of those pieces for people?
Typically, people who fit into this mold don't have a very traditional career path. It's not a very linear career path. They've explored a lot of different things, or they jump into maybe the same type of job, but then end up taking on a lot of other things at work as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like not just, I'm a teacher, but then suddenly I'm helping other teachers and like I'm doing all this other stuff.
I had
right?
a lot. That's really interesting. I had a lot of roles that were added to my plate as a teacher. Yes, that's super interesting. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're not fulfilled at work, but maybe they just feel like doing one thing feels really boring or uninteresting. But I mean, there's so many different types of multi-passionate. Some people like to dive into one topic and stick with it for like 3 to 5 years and get super good at it. Other people like me need to do multiple things at once, have more of that portfolio career where you're following multiple passions. I mean, there's lots of different ways to go about it. It's those people who, when they sit down to write their resume, are like, how am I supposed to put my work experience on a piece of paper? That's what I find. Most people who reach out to me are just like, my work experience is so all over the place. I don't even know how to turn this into something that I can either start a business with or, get a job where people can resonate with who I am.
Okay, so then how does someone go about beginning to build a career or find a job that would fit this type of lifestyle? What does that look like?
It's really about thinking about the types of skills that you really enjoy using. So like looking back on your past experiences and seeing like, these are the things I really liked. These are the things I didn't like. And then that can provide you with quite a few options usually in terms of the different types of roles or things that might interest you to try in the future. And then what I actually encourage people to do, instead of being like, okay, you need to pick one thing, because I hate that message. We have to pick one thing and then you need to apply for those jobs and that's just what you need to do. I recommend that people choose maybe like up to 3 things that they want to do and then start testing the market, right? Like sending out your resume, contacting people, having informational interviews with people in these 3 different roles or 3 different industries and see where you kind of end up. I mean, it's very similar to starting a business because when you're looking for a job, you're marketing yourself. And so you can do that market research just like someone would do when they're starting a business, asking people like, is this a product you'd be interested in? Is this something you'd pay for? You can do the same thing with yourself. Be like, okay, I'm super interested in this job. What does it look like in your industry? What do people need from employees? What kind of certifications or trainings do you think I would need to take? You looked at my resume, is there anything that you really felt like was missing? And so that can help individuals get more information into what they need to improve on their resume or whether it's an option to move into that, new industry. Because I've helped people make like really wild transitions. Every book you read, they're like, if you're going to make a transition, it needs to be like a step down, or you need to move just the industry with the same position title or a new position title with the same industry. I helped someone who was a director in a bank transition into a director in a community development role in a corporation. That is like wildly different, a wildly different different world, industry and position. And she made the transition really seamlessly. So I think if you can identify what you're good at and what your skills are and what other experience you have outside of work, you can really show the hiring manager that you could be a really great hire.
What about knowing which passions to pursue in a career or business type field? Let's say you're passionate about painting, but maybe it's just something you like to do for fun. Or how do you know some of those things they're meant to just be for fun or they're meant to just be part of you, but maybe not be part of your work? Any advice on deciphering that?
Going through coaching with someone like yourself or me is really helpful to figure out what you really like and don't like. You know, when I first started my business, I don't know if you know this, but I actually started two businesses at the same time. So I started resume writing and career coaching, which was going to be just the temporary business. And then I started a business doing horse therapy with youth. Then that I was like, that is my passion, like 100%. I'm going to just like go all in on that one day. And, you know, a year later, it just didn't work out and I didn't enjoy it. And I found like I'd rather spend time with my horse for fun than for business. And so sometimes, you know, that trial and error, instead of diving into something full time, like maybe I would do, I would recommend trying something, you know, part time. Like, hey, I'm a painter. I wonder if, you know, my paintings would resonate with people. You could take a couple of your paintings and post them online for sale and kind of test the market, see what happens. And then you're like, oh, you know, now it feels like pressure and turn into work. And that might not be what you want out of your painting, which is what happened with me. Or you might find you really love it and people really resonate with your work. And that's something you want to, you know, dive into more. So I think a little bit of like learning and testing can be a great way to narrow that down.
Dabbling on a small scale, just testing the waters so you're not all in or you don't have to invest tons of money or anything. You don't have a lot of overhead. You can just see how it feels. What kind of permission or grace can you help give people? Maybe they have done this before where they have tried, like your example of the horse therapy. And then I have a good example of my own of flipping furniture. And you get to that point where you're like, this is not fun anymore. And maybe it's the millennial in us that feels like we're quitting, feels like it's a bad thing that we've changed our mind again. What can you speak to about that? Because I have my own thoughts, but I know you will too.
Yeah, I could so relate to this. There's another book that's really similar called Refuse to Choose by Barbara Sher. And it's like this similar type of story. In her book, she talks about how a lot of us feel like if we stop, we're quitting too early and someone else will be like, oh my God, you're doing something else. But you have to think about what you're getting out of it, is what she talks about. She's like, if you have completed it in your mind, like you've tested this and you found it wasn't exactly what you wanted, that's a completion. That's like your own ending to the story, which I thought was really interesting. Not something that really a big mind shift for me because I'm also feel the same way as you. But as someone who had 32 jobs in 15 years, I don't think that, I mean, I did it a little too much, I would say, but giving yourself some grace and really listening to that inner voice. I think a lot of times, like, especially with this business, this horse therapy business, I was like, you can't quit. Like, again, what are people going to think? Like, you posted all over the internet about it. And like, you know, you have to just keep going. Like, it'll get better. It'll get better. It'll get better. So then a year later, it was not better. And I quit and nobody even really noticed. So
isn't that funny? You think that it's just going to be this huge thing and people are going to be like shocked and comment and call you or message you. And then you do it and you're like, oh, everybody else is worried about themselves, just like I'm worried about myself. And it's not actually that big of a deal. Like it feels big in your body. It might feel big in your head. It feels really big, but there's a lot of strength and taking your own power back to be able to change your mind and say, I've gotten what I've gotten from this and that's fine, but I'm moving on. I just feel like it's so personal to us that it makes sense to us and probably doesn't make sense to anyone else. And we can waste a lot of thought and maybe even thought spiraling trying to think about what other people are thinking about our choices.
For sure. Whenever someone asks me, so like, you know, what are you doing now? I'm always like, oh man, they're asking me that because I've made so many changes. But I've been 3.5 years in the same business.
Wow.
So I think that's a pretty big, I mean, the longest job stint I've ever had was 5 years. So I'm planning to break that.
Get it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, I know what you mean. People will be like, what are you up to now? Because this is my third year out of the classroom. And sometimes I just don't, it depends on who they are. Sometimes it was just for small talk and they're being nice and they just, I don't even want to like get into it because it's like, well, like I feel obligated to explain maybe in certain circumstances of, well, it was this, but it's now it's part of it is this, but it's still this. And, I think we just need to get out of our own way. I've been trying to be better about just saying what I'm doing and skip the explaining, because I'm really just doing that because of whatever story I've made up for myself in my own head, that it's necessary to do that when you don't owe anyone that. It doesn't need to make sense to anybody else. It could look crazy to other people. It doesn't matter really, as long as it's aligned for you.
Yeah, I have a friend, who whenever I tell her about like this new idea that I have, she always says to me, I'm so inspired by your ability to take action. And I thought about that and I was like, that is really actually quite interesting, because that is a theme that I have throughout my life. Because yes, I do make a lot of changes, but like it all is revolved around taking action rather than just sitting on your idea and not actually doing anything about it. So I've tried to reframe it that way, that I'm just an action taker.
That's really interesting. So many of us have ideas and, things pop into our head and we're like, oh, we should do that. And then inaction is obviously why those things just stay ideas. Sometimes sharing those with people that maybe aren't ready to hear the idea or aren't the ideal people to share it with can contribute to your inaction. So are you someone that runs ideas past people first, or do you like, I have this idea, feels good to me, boom, take action?
I'll run it by like select people.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very selective of who I would run it by. And then I just go for it. In business, there's so much advice out there about like testing the market and finding out what people want. And I haven't really done that, to be honest. I've just kind of done what I felt was right. And it's been fine for me.
Anything else you want to talk about that we haven't mentioned?
In the business world, one of the things that, is the big message out there is that you have to niche down and you have to sell one product. I spent like years, like the first like 2 years of my business, I was like, how am I going to pick a niche? How am I going to like just niche down to one product? And when I got out of my own way as well and just listened to what I wanted to do rather than what everyone else out there was telling me to do, started to notice a really big difference in, just resonating with people and, building my business. I just encourage people to like get out there and break the rules, right? Like you don't have to do what everyone else says just because that's what they're doing and that's working for them. And I think that's an important message for multi-passionates, because we're always put in a box. Even if you're creative enough to start your own business or whatever, you're still put in a box by saying you have to niche down, you have to have one product. Take your big idea and put it in a box. And I just think that we're all out of the box people. And so we need more of that. And so when you can really tap into that authenticity, you can bring that into your business or into your career, kind of whatever you decide to do.
That's a great message. I love that. So what are you working on that's coming up this fall or winter that we should be looking out for?
I just launched a job search toolkit. So that's for people who want to just, create their own personal brand, do their own career clarity. It's more kind of like a journaling focus thing. So I just launched that. And honestly, for this winter, from now until December, I'm just working on building my network, meeting more people, getting on podcasts, interacting on LinkedIn. That's kind of my goal. So it's not as interesting as I would love it to be, but it's just the part of the business that has to be done.
Yes, absolutely. No, I love that transparency. So where can people find you?
Hang out on LinkedIn, pretty much only on LinkedIn at Steph Gillies. And then I have my website, Destination Dream Job. And I also have a podcast as well called Destination Dream Job that you were a guest on a while back as well.
Yes, perfect. All right, I'll link all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being on. I think it's really nice that we can shed some light on the fact that so many of us are multi-passionate and that it's a great thing and can be used as a superpower and just not as like this, oh, you changed your mind again. Oh, you willy-nilly. It's awesome and can really build your career and business around it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're ready for podcast mentoring, whether it's setup, editing, planning, or guesting, you can book a one-on-one call with me through the link in the show notes. I hope you feel seen, inspired, and like your dreams and goals are completely valid, because they are. See you next Tuesday.